Hello! Today I'm excited to show you my new knit autumn dress, a blend of elegance and comfort that I designed for those fall mornings when leaving my warm bed is a challenge. It's so soft like a blanket, offering both style and coziness. The shape was inspired by the designs of Madeleine Vionnet, and just as her dresses, mine is also cut on the bias that makes it drape effortlessly over the body. My inspiration was the view on my daily morning bike ride. When I look at the autumn scenery, I feel deep nostalgia, but also longing and excitement for the future. I would like to bring these feelings and colors home with me, so they can inspire me in the process of sewing my own wardrobe. The beautiful light in the room puts me in such a great mood to start working on this dress. I've already cut out all the fabric pieces according to the sewing pattern that I made. Now I'm preparing the other tools I need. For the fabric I use a rusty red jersey that is elastic both ways. The shape of my dress is quite elegant, but this casual textile will balance it out and make it into a great everyday piece. I recommend using a knit or woven fabric for this project with a small elasticity. As all the pieces are cut on the bias, that adds some extra stretch to the dress. These are the pattern pieces that we will need for the dress. There are the two upper front parts, the two triangles for the waist, the front skirt, the back, and the two sleeves. Step 1 is the bodice. I start with the pleats on the front part. There are marked lines on the pattern that I transferred to the wrong side of my fabric. Then I fold it accordingly to the lines. The pleats will face away from each other when I wear the dress, so here on the wrong side of the fabric they need to face inwards. I fold them inwards and then I secure them with pins. I put in the pins perpendicularly to the edge of the fabric because it's easier to pull them out during sewing. Then I sew them here. For this first part I use my regular sewing machine with a ballpoint needle that works the best on scratchy fabrics. I carefully pull out all the pins before I reach them. Do not break the needle in the machine. This is how they look like. The second step is attaching the triangles that will create the waistline. I put them face to face and then I match the pleats of the upper front part to the notches of the triangle. First I pin these and then the rest. Then I sew along these two lines. I would like these parts to have stretchy seams, so from now on I will use my overlocker. I have to be careful to arrange the pleats so they are nice and flat as I sew them. You could also use a tiny zigzag stitch on a regular sewing machine if you don't have an overlocker. Then I repeat the same thing on the other side. Now it's time to assemble the upper front with the front part of the skirt. This is when the dress finally starts to take shape. First, I check if the seams match, because as the fabric was cut on the bias, it can easily change shape. I pin together the bodice pieces at the center front. Then I match the center of the bodice to the center of the skirt. And then I continue pinning them together towards the edges. I sew them together in the same order, the center first and then the waist, from the center outwards. It's very important to match everything perfectly in the center, because this is the focal point and the main design feature of the dress, so take your time at this part. It's a little bulky in the center here, but nothing that a good press can't fix. At this point, I iron all the seams on the dress to make sure all seam allowances face in the same direction. I give special attention to the center point where all the seams meet. Step number 4 is the shoulder. I place the front and the back piece face to face and then pin the shoulders together. I sew them with my overlocker. I really enjoy working with this machine. It saves me so much time during the sewing. If we don't count, of course, the time of threading the machine. That is my biggest nightmare. And I need to redo it a couple of times every time I use it. This is how the shoulders look like. Then I press them. Step number 5 is attaching the sleeves. First, I gather them so they fit in the armhole. I set my machine on the longest stitch length and sew between the 2 notches without enforcing the edges or cutting this extra thread. Then I pull the bottom thread to gather the shoulder like this. I arrange the gathers with my fingers to make them as even as possible. They are not gonna look like puffy sleeves. This only gives them a natural curve. It takes up the shape of the shoulder after it's done. First I pin both edges of the sleeves into the armhole, and then I start going towards the middle. This way I can still adjust the gathers and I can make them the length of my sleeve match the armhole. It takes some time to arrange them, but it's definitely shorter to arrange it twice and sew only once than seam ripping and fixing the mistake later. This works in theory, but in reality, of course, I open and resew many of my seams. And doing those mistakes is always part of the process and very normal. So this is how the shoulder looks like when it's sewn in. Step 6 is sewing the sides. I fold the dress in 2, having the front and the back face to face laying on each other. I start pinning under the armhole first to make sure that all the seams meet at this point. Then I pin the sides and the arms. After that, I sew them together with my overlocker. Step number 7 is finishing the neckline, and I will use a bias tape to do that. This is probably the most challenging part of the dress. So first I measure the neckline all around to see how long my bias tape needs to be. Then I lay out my leftover fabric and I cut out a strip that is 4 cm wide on the bias. This is as long as the circumference of my neckline. This measurement is not included in the pattern, as the shape of the neckline can distort as you work with the fabric. I fold the bias tape in 2 and then I press it. Starting at the edge of the neckline, I start pinning the tape into place. The open edge of the tape needs to match with the raw edge of the neckline. I only pin the first half of the front neckline. I stop at the tip of the V. I sew this with a regular straight stitch. Then I fold the dress in two. I will make a very short seam here to keep the V-neck short and pointy. This is a very short distance, so I sew once forward and then back all the way without reinforcing the stitches. Then I pin the rest of the bias tape all along the neckline. Be punctual here and start sewing exactly where you left off at the V to avoid having a gap in the neckline. As you see, my bias tape ended up being slightly longer than my neckline, so that's why it's hanging by the edge here. I sew all the way to the shoulder seam and then I stop. I place the bias tapes on top of each other, and I will make a perpendicular seam on it as close to the shoulder line as possible. Then I cut the leftovers. This is not going to be visible because I will turn the bias tape on the other side. I fold the bias tape up and then turn it to the wrong side of the fabric like this. Around the V-neck it's a bit bulky, so I need to press that part very well. I pin it to place all around. I sew it on the inside by the folded edge of the bias tape 2 mm away from the edge. When I reach the V point on the neck, I pause and push my needle into the fabric. I lift up the foot, turn the dress around, I put down the foot again, and then I continue sewing. This is how it looks like on the right side. The puckering will hopefully disappear after I press it with my iron. The 8th step is the wrist line of the sleeve. I fold 1 cm up and press it. I do this all around the wrist. To avoid the bulkiness of the seam allowance, I make a little snip on it and then fold the seam allowances in different directions. Then I fold it up once again, 1 cm. This will create a little tunnel for the elastic to go through. If you prefer a wide angel sleeve, you could also leave it like this without gathering it. Then I pin it in place. I sew it as close as possible to the edge of the inside of the sleeve. When I reach the edge, I stop 3 cm before closing it. This will be the gap where I put in the elastic. I put a safety pin on the elastic and I put it in the hole. I pin the other edge of the elastic to my fabric so it doesn't slip inside while I'm dragging it. I try it on my wrist to see if it's tight enough, and I adjust it as needed. Then I tie the two edges of the elastic together. I hide the elastic in the tunnel, and then I close this little gap. I also put an elastic on the center back of the dress to make it more fitted. This didn't work out so well, and I think I will take it out, so I'm not gonna show you the process. I think I might sew some ties instead on the back of the dress. And we reach the final step, that is the hem of the dress. First I serge the edge of my fabric. I fold up 1.5 centimeters. I sew the hem on my regular sewing machine with a double needle. I start at the side seam and I sew on the right side of the fabric. I follow this little bump created by the edge of the fabric. The needles need to hit the edge of the bump exactly, so they can catch both layers. On the wrong side you can see how the zigzag is exactly on the overlocker stitch. And then the dress will be ready after this. Let me show you my result. Thank you so much for following along this sewing process. I made the sewing pattern myself, and if you like it as much as I do, you can download it for free and you can create your own version of it. I would love to see your creation, so if you make it, please leave a comment with your opinion. Now I'm just gonna enjoy the sunny autumn park and the way how my dress matches my surroundings. See you next time.